The conference room was all glass and polished steel, designed to intimidate. I sat alone on one side of the table, my portfolio on the floor beside my chair. Across from me was the hiring manager, a man named David Sterling. He hadn't looked up from my resume. He just flipped a page, then another. The silence was a weapon. Before we get into this, hit subscribe and tell me your city in the comments from where you are watching me. Now get back to the story. Finally. He tossed the paper onto the table. It skidded to a stop in front of me. "Marcus Johnson," he said, my name sounding like an accusation. "Your resume is adequate. State school. A few years at a mid-tier firm. But this is Sterling Solutions. We have a certain caliber. A brand to maintain." I kept my face neutral. "I understand. My experience at Grant & Wiley speaks for itself. I increased their regional client portfolio by 30% in 2 years. He waved a dismissive hand. "Grant & Wiley isn't Sterling. Look, I'll be blunt. We service a very specific high-net-worth clientele. They have certain expectations about who they're dealing with. Your qualifications are one thing. The fit is another." He leaned back, a cold, polished smile on his face. "We need someone who can walk into a room at the country club and not cause a distraction. You understand?" I understood perfectly. The fit was the color of my skin. The distraction was my presence. "I assure you my work is not a distraction," I said, my voice flat. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "It's not about your work, son. It's about perception. Our clients are old money. They're comfortable with a certain aesthetic." He stood up, the meeting clearly over. "We'll be in touch. Don't call us." I stood as well, leaving my resume on the table. It was trash now. "You won't be in touch," I said. He didn't deny it. He just walked to the door and held it open. As I passed him, he spoke again, his voice low, meant only for me. "Let me give you some free advice, kid. Know your place. Aim lower. There are plenty of other firms. One's more suited to your background." I didn't respond. I walked out of the Sterling Solutions office, through the marble lobby, and into the bright, indifferent sun. The humiliation was a cold stone in my gut, but colder still was the clarity. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed, with men like David Sterling as its gatekeepers. That was 5 years ago. Today, my driver pulled the Maybach up to the same steel and glass tower. The lobby was the same, but now the security guards nodded with deference. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson." I stepped into a private elevator that went straight to the penthouse. My penthouse, the headquarters of Johnson Ventures. My head of security, a former Special Forces operative named Reyes, met me as the doors opened. "He's in the conference room, sir." "As you instructed." I walked into the main conference room. The same one. The same table. David Sterling sat there. He looked smaller. The polished confidence was gone, replaced by a desperate, sweating anxiety. His suit was good, but it was 5 years out of style. The recession had not been kind to Sterling Solutions. The news said they were drowning in debt, their old money clients fleeing to more agile, modern firms. Firms like mine. He looked up as I entered, his eyes widening in a mixture of shock and pure, undiluted fear. I didn't smile. I took the seat at the head of the table, the seat of power. "David," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. "You asked for a meeting." He swallowed, his throat dry. "Marcus, Mr. Johnson, I need your help." I let the silence hang. I let him sweat. "My firm, we're facing some liquidity challenges. A temporary situation, of course, but a strategic partnership, an infusion of capital from Johnson Ventures. It would be a lifesaver." I steepled my fingers. "A strategic partnership," I repeated. "You came to me for a job." The color drained from his face. He had hoped I wouldn't know, that his humiliation could be private. A consulting role, an advisory position, anything. I looked at him, this man who had told me to know my place. This man who had laughed at my ambition. I leaned forward, just slightly. "Tell me, David," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "What exactly is your place?" David Sterling looked like a man who had swallowed broken glass. His hands, clasped on the polished table, were trembling. He tried to speak, but only a dry clicking sound came out. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Johnson. Marcus." What I said back then. It was a different time, a different corporate culture. I didn't blink. The culture seemed pretty clear to me. You told me to aim lower. You said I wouldn't fit the aesthetic of your clients. He flinched. Hearing his own words thrown back at him was a physical blow. I was wrong. Clearly I was wrong. Look at what you've built. It's impressive. Impressive, I echoed, letting the word hang. And now you want to be a part of it. You want me to save your failing company. You want a job. He nodded, a desperate, jerky motion. A chance. That's all I'm asking for. A chance to prove my value to you. Reyes, standing by the door, shifted his weight almost imperceptibly. A signal. The performance was over. It was time for the verdict. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city. The same city where I'd walked out of his office 5 years ago, feeling hollowed out. I turned back to him. Your company is a corpse, David. It's leaking money. Your brand is toxic. Your old money clients are with me now. Why would I throw a lifeline to a sinking ship? He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. Give me one reason. One asset you have that I could possibly want. He was silent. He had nothing. His contacts were obsolete. His name was mud. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, I said, walking back to the table. I'm not going to give you a job. I'm not going to invest in Sterling Solutions. The hope in his eyes died, replaced by a bleak final despair. I'm going to buy it, I said. He stared, uncomprehending. Buy it? The name, the client list, what's left of it, the physical assets. I'll have my CFO draw up an offer. It will be a fraction of what you think it's worth. It will be, to be frank, an insult, but it will be more than the bankruptcy court will give you. I was going to swallow his legacy whole, grind it up and use it for parts, erase his name from the industry, and replace it with mine. He looked down at his hands. He knew he had no choice. It was this or nothing. And me? He whispered. I picked up a tablet from the table, pulling up a file. I'm creating a new division, Logistics and Facilities Management. We need a new regional supervisor for the Midwest. It's based in Omaha. The job involves overseeing janitorial contracts, maintenance schedules, and supply inventory for 3 office buildings. I looked up from the tablet and directly into his eyes. The position reports to the head janitor. The starting salary is $45,000 a year. No bonus, no stock options. You'll have a company truck, a Ford Ranger. His face was a mask of horror. It was a brutal, calculated demotion, a professional execution. You can't be serious, he stammered. It's the only offer you'll get from me, I said, my voice flat and final. Take it or don't. The offer expires at 5 p.m. today. I turned and walked toward the door. Reyes will see you out. As I left the room, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel his world shattering behind me. The man who had laughed at me for being black was now being offered a job that was beneath him. A job designed to humiliate him every single day. And the chilling part? He was going to take it. Because a man like David Sterling would always choose survival over pride. He would take the job, move to Omaha, and spend the rest of his career knowing that his every paycheck was signed by the man he told to aim lower. My only mistake was, I was black, and it was the reason I built an empire just to watch men like him beg for a place in it. The silence in the penthouse was absolute after Reyes escorted David Sterling out. I stood at the window, watching the tiny cars below. There was no victory in this, no satisfaction. It was a surgical strike, necessary, but messy. My intercom buzzed. It was Lena, my COO. "Marcus, the press release is drafted. Ready for your review." "Send it through," I said. On my screen, the document appeared. The headline was simple. Johnson Ventures acquires assets of Sterling Solutions. The body was a masterclass in corporate assassination. It used phrases like strategic absorption of residual assets and streamlining of redundant operations. It didn't mention David Sterling by name. It didn't have to. Everyone in the industry would know what it meant. His life's work was being digested by my company, and the announcement would read like a footnote. An hour later, my personal line rang. A number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it would be. I answered. "Johnson." It was David. His voice was a raw, broken thing. I accept the position in Omaha. I'd known he would. Desperation is a powerful motivator. "The paperwork will be couriered to your home. You have 48 hours to sign. Your start date is 2 weeks from Monday. HR will email you the details on the company truck." A long, shaky breath on the other end of the line. "Is there any room for negotiation on the title? The salary?" "No," I said, and ended the call. The story broke on the financial blogs that afternoon. The comments were a mix of awe and schadenfreude. People remembered David Sterling. They remembered his reputation for being a ruthless, old-school elitist. They saw the poetry in his downfall. The narrative wrote itself, the dinosaur extinguished by the very future he tried to exclude. A week later, the signed contract was on my desk. David Sterling was officially an employee of Johnson Ventures. I had Reyes assign one of our... The final report was the one I couldn't ignore. It wasn't about office paint or supply closets. It was from the HR director in Omaha. David Sterling had been involved in an altercation. I had the video conference feed patched directly to my screen. The HR director, a competent woman named Brenda, looked uncomfortable. It was in the break room. "Mr. Johnson." Mr. Sterling made a comment to one of the junior custodians, a young man named Ben. He told him he had a poor work ethic, and that if he applied himself, he might not be stuck in this job forever. I knew what was coming. I'd met Ben. He was putting himself through night school for engineering. "According to witnesses," Brenda continued. Ben replied, "At least I'm going somewhere. You're just a has-been who works for the help." She paused. Mr. Sterling then threw a cup of coffee. He missed Ben, but it shattered against the wall. He was escorted from the building. We've placed him on unpaid administrative leave pending termination. There it was, the final ugly unraveling. The polished country club David Sterling was gone, replaced by a man who threw coffee cups in a break room. "Process the termination," I said, my voice devoid of inflection. "Sir?" Brenda seemed surprised. "The union will have questions. There will be a process. Let them. The grounds are violent conduct." "Process it," she nodded. "Yes, sir." An hour later, my private line rang again. The same unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. His voice was stripped of everything. Pride, anger, even desperation. It was just hollow. "Marcus, they're firing me. Please, don't do this. It's over. You won. I'm broken. Just let me have this. It's all I have left." I deleted the message. The next day, the formal termination papers were signed. David Sterling was no longer an employee of Johnson Ventures. He was cut loose with no severance from a job that was itself a punishment. A month passed. The industry had moved on. The Sterling Solutions acquisition was a forgotten bullet point in our quarterly earnings report. I was working late when Reyes stepped into my office. "Sir, there's a situation downstairs, at the main lobby security desk." I looked up. "What kind of situation?" "It's David Sterling. He's asking to see you. He's insistent. He's not causing a disturbance, but he won't leave." I felt a cold stillness settle over me. This was the epilogue. I had wondered how it would end. "Send him up," I said. Reyes hesitated. "Sir, security says he looks rough." "Send him up." A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened. David Sterling stood there. He looked 20 years older. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. He smelled of stale coffee and defeat. He didn't wait for an invitation. He walked slowly into the center of my office, his eyes scanning the panoramic view, the art, the absolute power the room represented. He looked at me. There were no more pleas in his eyes, no more anger, just a terrible, clear understanding. "You took everything," he said. His voice was quiet, raspy. "I didn't take anything you didn't give me," I replied, remaining seated. "You built your world on a foundation of exclusion. I just showed you that the foundation was rotten." He gave a slow, shaky nod. "You showed me." He looked around again, a ghost touring his own past. "I laughed at you. I told you to aim lower." He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "And you aimed so high you became the sun. And you burned my whole world down." He didn't say anything else. He just turned and walked back toward the elevator. He didn't look back. The doors closed behind him. Reyes looked at me. "Should I have security?" "No," I said. "He's gone." And he was. I never saw or heard from David Sterling again. Some said he left the city. Others said he drifted into obscurity. It didn't matter. The man who had laughed at me for being black when I cried for help had finally stopped begging. He had finally understood the new reality, a reality I built. My only mistake was I was black, and it was the one thing he could never overcome.